Able to seal him. Here's the pass. Oh, what a catch! Leaping into the air and pulling it down is T. Higgins. Burrow facing pressure. Goes over the top. Wide open is Chase. And he splits the defenders for the touchdown. Cincinnati kid, Hubbard's got a convoy, chased by Andrews, at the 30, the 20, he will score!
Who dey, Bengal fans? He is Mon, I am Jake, that is Eric. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Who dey, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We have got an awesome show coming your way tonight, a fun show I'm very excited about, kind of going back to our old school roots, Mon. We first started this show over 2 years ago now. Please, guys, comment in the comment section. We want to hear your thoughts on tonight's show, and that is, who are the 2024 unsung heroes? The guys that need to step up and be big for the Bengals this year, for them to take that next step and bring home that championship ring. Mom, before we get started, how's your week been, bud?
Good. Busy. It's really super hot in Florida for everybody that doesn't live in Florida. It's unbearable hot. Everything is going well. My AC's working, thank goodness. Two of my kids are at home, so it's good to see them. We had dinner tonight. I had a birthday on the 1st, a little bit older, and
just a little bit
healthy. Yeah, just a little. I still got the advanced genetics. I got it going on.
You still got the stash. And you're excited too, Mon. I don't know. I just got off a cruise, but when I got off the cruise, I heard something happened with the Sixers. I don't know exactly what it is. Eric went back and forth, and Eric was making fun of it, and you were excited.
On my birthday, the Philadelphia 76ers spent almost $500 million on three players.
And none of it went to Mon.
What a present. And the Edmonton Oilers signed 4 studs. The Edmonton Oilers went from fourth favorite to win the Stanley Cup next year to like the top seed. So I'm excited about that. I just need my Bengals to win it all this year. Sports is going to be good to me.
Listen, hey, Reds, they're still in it. They're giving us hope, Mon, like they always do. I'm loving this Yankee series right now. Reds up 3-0 as we speak. Again, who dey, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining in. Again, tonight's show, we are going to talk about the 2024 unsung heroes of this Bengals roster. These are guys that maybe have been backups for a while now and just need to take that next step. Again, you know, we've seen this Bengals team, the success that they've had in the past has come from that depth and those guys making plays that are coming off the bench. We haven't seen that a lot lately, and obviously that is going to be a big key in this Bengals upcoming season. I'm going to go ahead and kick this thing off if that's okay, because to me, my number one unsung hero on this roster is actually not a player, Mon. It is a coach, and it is Dan Pitcher. Again, this is a guy who has really been brought up through this system. He's been a guy that obviously has worked a lot with Joe Burrow, and he has seen the positives and the negatives of this offense. He has seen what works well for Joe Burrow. He has been in the trenches with Burrow throughout these last couple years, and now Dan Pitcher is taking over this offense as the offensive coordinator. To me, this guy could make the biggest impact of anybody else on this roster if he goes into this season and he reconstructs this offense to give Burrow better opportunity, more shots under center, more play action, a better run game, things, Mon, that we have talked about until we have been blue in the face, things that we have not seen from this offense. What are your thoughts on Dan Pitcher and the impact, Mon, that he can make on this 2024 season?
Well, I'll tell you this. I hope he follows in the footsteps of Brian Callahan and he becomes a head coach in a couple years. If that happens, he's done a hell of a job. He's done a hell of a job. He's going to want to come in, and obviously, he is good. There's going to be some changes. We said this last year with the Burrow injury. The Bengals offense could evolve a little bit, maybe go a little bit more run centric, not pass as much. And I could see him coming in and implementing, altering some things to freshen up that offense. He's going to want to put his own seasoning on the Bengal offense, and obviously very well respected. It was a quick hire when Callahan left. The Bengals knew right away that this is the guy they wanted. And obviously, from what I've read and seen, Joe Burrow loves him, and it's good to have him on the staff. I think he's going to do a really good job. And I would not be surprised if he ends up being a head coach in 2, 3, 4 years. You're right, Jake. That's a good selection. We need him to succeed. He's somebody that, is going to play a huge part for the Cincinnati Bengals.
I agree too. And the way this works, Mon, this quarterback relationship, that's Dan Pitcher has been the guy that Joe Burrow has bounced everything off of. I assure you, when Joe Burrow's been frustrated, if there's something going on with the offense that he did not like, I assure you, Dan Pitcher was the first guy to hear about it. And I feel like that relationship of Pitcher and Burrow. Again, I think that's why the Bengals jumped on it so quickly. But I feel like that relationship with Burrow and Pitcher is going to bring out a different feel for this offense. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see. Obviously, with a healthy Joe Burrow, everybody looks better calling plays. But this offensive line might be the best one that Joe Burrow has had since he's been here. I say might, but it definitely is. And a lot more explosive weapons. So going to be very interesting to see how Dan Pitcher impacts his 2024 season. All right, Mon, go ahead. You're up next. Give me a name. Give me a name that I need to be looking for in 2024.
Well, it's every Bengal fan has talked about this guy for years, and he was a high draft pick. I'll use the word, we've been teased by his potential. He's been unhealthy. Every camp he gets hurt, but we need somebody like a Joseph Ossai to take that next step. Is he going to start? No, he's not going to start. What's the problem with the Bengals and that defensive line? They play too many snaps, the starters, that is. They get worn down during the season. We need some guys to come in and give them, give us quality snaps while Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard get a breather. Joseph Ossai reeks talent. He could be a special athlete. We need him to stay healthy. We need him to take that next step, give us 6, 7, 8, 9 sacks. I think it could happen. That AFC Championship game, that year, I know he had the 15-yard penalty, the late hit on Mahomes, but the last 6 weeks of that season, he was one of the best defensive players on that team. And that's what I want to see. I want to see that Joseph Ossai. That's an unsung hero. I know he's been on the roster a few years. The Bengals roster is littered with guys like that, but Joseph Ossai is mine.
I agree, man. And I'm going to say this, Ossai, in that 22 year, he just seemed to be around the football more. His stats, he played in a lot more games too, but 16 games played, 17 total tackles, 3.5 sacks, had a couple big fumble recoveries. And then you go to 2023 and he plays 14 games with 10 tackles. And guys, really a lot of time, he was a healthy scratch. This is a guy, I agree, Mon. This is a guy who we talk about Trey Hendrickson needing some help. I mean, last year was a Trey Hendrickson show. Joseph Ossai really kind of just fell off of a cliff. I mean, that Mahomes play, yes, it was a big play, but it really he made some bigger plays, positive plays in the playoffs in 2022. And it seems just like after that play, he just kind of mentally checked out. But I agree with you. I think Joseph Asai is definitely a guy that has got to play better to help this football team. And he's not the only one on that defensive line, right, Mon? I mean, some other guys have got to step up too. It just can't be the Trey Hendrickson show.
No, it can't. I'll say it again. Our starting defensive lineman played too many snaps. B.J. Hill was unbelievable the first 6 games of the season last year. He had a good season all around, but you could tell the wear and tear of the season was hurting him. And that's where, we needed other guys. Like I said, this roster is full of Joseph Ossais. We need guys to come in and continue their development. Second, third, fourth round picks. I mean, that's the core of your roster. We need those guys. I'm not going to name them because I'm going to name some of them in a few minutes. But we need those third round picks from last year, the year before. If those guys wash out, that's a bad look on your team. That's a horrible look. We need those guys to play. And I got a few more coming up.
Well, I'm going to throw out a name, and again, I know this is an easy one, but to me, I think this is a guy who has the opportunity to make a huge impact on this defense, and that's Dax Hill. A guy who, again, last year had 110 tackles in the safety position. Now is being moved to that boundary corner. And it's a guy who, the Bengals might be counting on to fill some pretty big shoes. And to me, Dax Hill, I know he had 110 tackles last year, was kind of lost in the mix of it all. And now he takes a step back with Von Bell and Gino coming in. Now Dax Hill is being pushed out to this boundary corner position. It's going to be interesting to see the impact that Dax Hill has on this defense this year. Again, moving positions, and hopefully the Bengals putting him in the right positions to make plays. But what do you think, Mon, about Dax Hill and his possible impact on this upcoming season, moving to that cornerback position?
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. That's actually one of mine also. It's essential. He's playing a different spot. He's ultra athletic. Obviously, we're not worried about the athleticism and his speed, but they had him at safety, and now he's going to be a cornerback. And the Bengals have a lot of young talent at that position. Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner, Mike Hilton is a veteran. DJ Ivy's coming back from an injury. He really impressed last year. But Dax Hill, they don't have another veteran presence back there. They're really expecting him to take that position and come in and give them quality snaps if needed. It's going to be important. We can't have a first-round pick wash out. Just can't have it. We talked about second and third rounders. You can't have a first-rounder like Dax Hill wash out. I think he's too talented for that to happen. I think he's going to come in. He might have some growing pains, but I think he's going to make plays. And you know what? What do the Bengals like? Let's talk about the offensive line real quick. They like offensive linemen to complete every spot. Well, guess what, Dax Hill? Dax Hill played safety. If somebody gets hurt there, hey, go in and play safety. A lot of versatility there with him. I'm still high on him. Remember Jesse Bates. We said this in past episodes. He didn't start off, like wildfire with the Bengals. He had an uneven start to his career.
Yes, he did.
Turned into be a $50 million guy for the Falcons. I think Dax Hill is going to be a good pro, and I think he's going to do well.
So on that, to jump in on that, Mon, I think you might have him on your list, but you could probably put Dax Hill / DJ Turner. Whoever wins this job is the guy that we need to step up. We know that Cam Taylor-Britt is the solid number one corner right now, but what do you think about DJ Turner's odds of taking this position and running?
Yeah, like we were talking off screen, I already have him. DJ Turner is a starter, and I was thinking more backups. But, Eric, that's a valid point. That's a great point. DJ Turner is a very young player. Cam Taylor-Britt's still a young player. I love what we've seen, really have, but we still don't really know 100% what they are. They still have to continue to develop. DJ Turner, I think, up until week 11, was playing so well. That Jacksonville Jaguar game, he was unbelievable. But then guess what? He hit that rookie wall, and his play really dropped. What DJ Turner do we have? What do we have? I mean, look at Jordan Battle, also made an all-rookie team. Jordan Battle is going to be a backup now. Yeah. We need to continue to get him some snaps, find a creative way to get him on the field. And you know what? He is the future at safety. Battle is. I sort of jumped ahead there, guys.
And I think you probably share this sentiment to answer Vanguard's question here. Why are they moving Dax around? I think Mon answered it. It's a first-round draft pick, extremely talented. You got to do everything in your power to find a way for that guy to get on the football field. This is the year to figure it out. If he can't get a starting job at corner, he's probably time to try and move on, and that experiment is over. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think for me with Dax Hill, and again, Mon touched on this a minute ago, but you cannot have a first round draft pick buried in your roster. You just can't do it. It's a bad look. Those are guys that you've got to find a way to get them on the field. And I think that's what the Bengals are trying to do is they know they can't bury Dax Hill. And to be honest with you guys, Dax Hill, to me, I don't know what he's going to end up being in his Bengal career, if he's going to be a corner, boundary corner, or nickel, or he's going to play safety or what. But he didn't get the job done at safety. And you saw a lot of issues last year with the back end of that defense and the communication. And listen, playing safety is not just about running around and being athletic and being able to be a ball hawk. It's about you're running the back end of that defense. You're making sure everybody knows what's going on back there. You're making sure everything's being communicated out. And that is not one of Dax Hill's strengths. Obviously, the Bengals went out and completely redid their entire safety room. So, for me, I just think Dax Hill is way too talented to be buried on this roster somewhere. But he also needs to step up into this new role and be able to give the Bengals what they need at that position, whether it is at boundary or whether it is at nickel, wherever he can fit in, he needs to do it. We know he's a great tackler, guys. I mean, you put him inside the box, he comes off the edge well. He's great at rushing the passer. He's great at tackling, especially at the line of scrimmage. But it's that other stuff that we worry about. I'm interested to see how he does covering as well, and what Lou does to kind of mask some of those deficiencies that we've seen from Dax Hill. Going to be very, very interesting. Mon, throw out another name for us. What do you got?
Well, okay. I mean, I don't really have a name here. I have a position. We talked about this a little bit off air, and it could be multiple names, but here's a fear. I know that it's unsung heroes, but who's going to be the unsung players for this spot? Cordell Volson has started every snap 2 years. So has Karras. All right. Okay. Kappa has started almost every game except the last game of the Ravens game where he was injured and he missed the playoffs. So 97% of the snaps he's played since he's been a Bengal. That interior offensive line has been relatively very, very healthy.
Yes, it has.
Who's our depth? Is it Cody Ford? Is Trent Brown going to jump in if somebody I don't want any of them to get hurt. But let's face it, guys, 3 years in a row without any significant injuries on the interior offensive line. That's, I hope it happens, but guys, injuries happen. I'm worried about that. Is Cody Ford, to me, Cody Ford's on this list. Is he going to be able to come in and give us quality snaps? He has to. Is Trey Hill finally going to be that 5th round pick from Georgia that comes in and is actually our backup center? Technically, he was beat out last year by Max Sharping. Max Sharping plays for another team now. Yeah. Is Matt Lee, I know I wasn't going to bring up rookies, but is Matt Lee at 288 ready to be our backup center? So that's something to monitor during training camp. Who's our backup interior offensive line? Because I'm going to tell you right now, that could be a significant roster flaw if some of these guys don't continue to develop and, if needed, give us quality snaps.
So there is something to talk about there. Sorry, Jake. There is something to talk about there. We talk about Cody Ford and we talk about Trey Hill and all these guys, but I think that one of the things we really have to watch for in training camp is we might not be talking about those guys as our depth pieces. We've got Trent Brown, we've got Amarius Mims, we've got Matt Lee. I mean, if something happens to Cordell Volson, what's to say that Ted Karras doesn't slide over to left guard, a position he played quite well? Matt Lee takes over center. If something happens to Kappa, who's to say Trent Brown doesn't slide into guard, a position he's played, and Amarius Mims slides into tackle? I would argue that we have significantly upgraded our depth, and we don't really need to know what those guys are because of these free agents and draft picks we did bring in.
I don't disagree with you, but guys, I mean, Matt Lee, great prospect for the future, 7th round pick. He's about 280, 285. Is he ready to come in? We'll find out in training camp. We'll find out. I have faith in the Bengals coaches to, set us up to succeed. We just need to make sure those guys stay healthy. But if not, we need quality backups to come in. I don't want a bunch of guys. Trent Brown is no doubt there, but they have some versatility. You're right. Karras can jump over to guard if needed, but we'll see. Go ahead, Jake.
I was just going to say, as a whole, we look at this offensive line, the depth of this offensive line. I mean, and I agree with the interior part of it, but I think as a whole, you have guys on this roster who have been on this roster, it seems like 3 or 4 years now, and are just not taking that next step, right? I mean, you talked about a guy like Trey Hill. You mentioned him. What about Deontay Smith? What about Jackson Carman? What about the guys that have been on this roster for 2 or 3 years, or whatever it's been, that just are not taking that next step? I mean, how do we know they're not taking that next step? Because the Bengals are going out and they've redone that entire offensive line with free agents for the most part. I mean, obviously Cordell Volson, and then you got Mims this year. But besides that, guys, it's been the Bengals going out and spending a ton of money on this offensive line because these depth pieces, like the Deontay Smiths, like the Trey Hills, like the Jackson Carman, those guys have not taken any steps forward. And again, I feel this is one of those things that I've talked about so much on this show is our development of these offensive linemen is just piss poor. It really is. It's not like the Bengals aren't going out trying to improve this offensive line, drafting and developing guys, but these guys just are not developing. And you're right, Mon. I mean, this is a serious issue with this Bengals roster because of guys that have been on this roster now for a couple years that all three of us, and I think all of Bengaldom out there, if we knew that Trey Hill had to go in and play significant football for this team, we're in trouble. I mean, we're in serious trouble.
I'll say this. As I mentioned earlier, they have been very healthy on the interior offensive line. What I'm about to say, I know it's a small sample size, but Trey Hill, Jackson Kirkland, Jackson Carman, all these guys have played in preseason against backups, and they get lit up. They don't look good.
Yes.
And, we need to, hopefully they continue to develop and get better. Some have shown flashes. Jackson Carman in that Buffalo a playoff game, he was a man possessed. He looked so good. Jackson Carman did. If we could get a little bit more of that from him, he's a 2nd round pick. You can't give up on 2nd round picks. We'll see how he does in camp. We'll see how that depth develops. But, I said this a few minutes ago, we got a lot of players that haven't had that opportunity. It's hard to really judge them, but we'll see. We'll see.
And I love what Cincy. I mean, Cincy hit the nail.
She knows football. She knows football. She knows football.
Frank Pollock, right, guys? I mean, doesn't he have to be on the hot seat? I mean, this is a great. Again, I talked about Dan Pitcher. What about Frank Pollock? What about this guy who, again, we could go over name after name after name of offensive linemen that have just not developed under Frank Pollock. But doesn't he have to be on the hot seat? What are your thoughts?
It's a great question. It's a great question. We've talked about it. She definitely knows what she's talking about. He has been given a lot of resources, and we got to see some results. got to see some results. And I think Mims is going to be a stud. I think Brown is going to be a solid player. Brown's had a solid career. He's got to stay healthy. This is the best offensive line Joe Burrow's had since he's been a Bengal, and we need to get some results out of him. That's it.
I agree. All right, I'm going to throw a name out here, and this is again, I know this is not I know this isn't a guy that's been buried on the Bengals roster, but I feel like this is a guy that could make a huge impact on this team. And it's interesting too, because you look at this tight end room, right? And we know what Sample is. We know what we're going to get from Sample. He's a great inline blocker. He's probably going to play more of an H-back, especially if the Bengals run the ball a little bit more this year with some of that power stuff and under center stuff. But Mike Gesicki, to me, guys, is in a part of his career where there has been a lot of hype around him. And don't get me wrong. I mean, he had 3 really good seasons in a row. I'm looking at here, 2019, 2020, 2021. Guys, this guy had almost 200 receptions in those 3 years. And after that, guys, it's been a huge drop-off. I mean, in that time frame, he also had over 2,000 yards receiving and about 13 touchdowns. And it's just been a huge drop-off from Mike Gesicki. But don't you think this is a guy who could be a huge unsung hero for this Bengals roster? It's a guy that all we've heard about from Mike Gesicki is he's never played for a quarterback as good as Joe Burrow. He's never been around what he's been around so far with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Mike Gesicki is a guy who has got to step up and be an unsung hero for this Bengals team, and could be. I think there's no doubt about it. But his production has really dropped off these last 2 years of his career. Is this going to be a career-saving opportunity in Cincinnati, Mon?
Well, I was excited when they signed him. He's going to be the most productive, if you want to call him a tight end. I know that's what he's listed at. He's really just a big wide receiver. He's not going to give you much in the blocking. He's just going to be a big, giant target. I think he's going to excel. I get it. He's had some down years, but everywhere he's gone, he's had production. And let's face it, when it comes to Bengal tight ends, 25 to 35 catches is considered a success. So I'm excited about him. And I think, it just adds another weapon for Joe Burrow. I mean, there is no shortage of weapons on this roster for him. I'm expecting big things from him.
And to add on, I know listeners of the Pulse know that Jake and I have been screaming to give Joe Burrow tight end for a couple of years now. You give Joe Burrow a tight end that can take those seam routes and catch the ball, and he's where he needs to be, and it is lights out. That's the dimension that Joe has been missing. There's just too many matchup. It's a nightmare matchup for most defenses, because how are you going to guard all these guys? How are you going to double team Jamar and guard T and guard Burton, and then have somebody of any talent that can go and lock down Gesicki? Joe, with a tight end like this, that's just going to take us over the top. And we've been screaming about it for so long. And everybody's talking about him, so it's hard to say he's going to be an unsung hero, but he's more the hero that we've all been waiting for. He's the guy that we've been waiting for. Let's hope for. And hopefully the Bengals drank that smart water that Mon's trying to capture as a sponsor.
Why do you guys think I'm so smart in the advanced genetics? What do you guys think? Look at this.
I thought it was the tap water, all the fluoride.
I'll tell you. Go ahead, Jake.
I just want to say one more thing about this Mike Gesicki thing. And I think it's really, again, like I said, this is not a guy that has been unhealthy. This is a guy who, knock on wood, has been very healthy throughout his entire career. And his numbers these last 2 years have really diminished. I just think this is a great opportunity. This guy now has been in the league. This is his 7th year, believe it or not, guys. 7th year Mike Gesicki has been in the NFL. And this is his opportunity. I mean, and he could, like you said, Eric, he could be what this offense has been missing, because you and I, we have stood on a mountaintop yelling for the Bengals, not just to get a tight end, but to get a tight end that you can be creative with, right? A guy that you can move around, that causes a huge matchups, especially between the hashes in the middle of the field. I mean, this is a guy that can run. He's got a great stride, and he catch the football. He's a good 50-50 guy. But this is a guy that's got to be one of those unsung heroes for this Bengals team. I really do believe that. So go ahead, Eric. What were you gonna say?
And well, just to speak to his last 2 years, I don't think people can really put it all on Mike for the down year he had. I mean, in New England, he's playing with just quarterback purgatory right now with Mac Jones and all his lookalike quarterbacks are trying to throw him the ball, and an offensive scheme that wasn't geared towards really passing the ball as much. Belichick was just trying to get through these last few seasons. And at the Dolphins in Miami, yeah, he had Tua, but he didn't. Tua was out most of that year with concussions and different injuries. So I would say that, those last 2 years probably benefited us by being able to sign him, because he didn't have those up years. What do you got, Mom?
KP says his quarterbacks were garbage truck juice at best.
Yeah. Guys, I want to talk about one guy. If you go back at the end of OTAs and you listen to Zach Taylor's press conference, end of OTA press conference, he's talking about important Bengals that all of a sudden he threw out a name. Everybody's like, what the hell? Why was he bringing up that guy's name? It was Shedrick Jackson, the wide receiver from Auburn. 6'2", 200 pounds. His RAS score was through the roof. Super athletic, 4.3 40. He was active 2-3 games last year. They called him up. For Zach Taylor to mention him, and the only reason I'm going to bring up his name, new kickoff rules. With this new kickoff, and teams are going to need athletes, because you're going to see significant, kickoffs compared to the previous years. I could see him with his athleticism being one of the kick returners, him and or a Chris Evans potentially. That's another guy we could talk about. But for Zach Taylor to mention him with all these other big-time Bengals, that caught my eye. And that's, the guy could easily get cut. But just remember that name, Shedrick Jackson. Obviously, Bo Jackson's nephew, super athletic. I could see him potentially making the team as a special teams demon.
So I got one before we transition back to players, but you're talking about kick returns. Let's talk about Darren Simmons. Darren Simmons is huge with this new kickoff return. We've heard a lot of speculation. A lot of other special teams coaches are just going to decide to just take the touchbacks. They don't care about it coming out to the 30. Darren Sims is out there and his mad scientist. He's scheming up reverses and all these different things. He could be huge. There's going to be a lot more kick returns for touchdowns this year, even if it's just in that feeler out period. But some double reverses or just some imagination to maybe put Yoshi back there. I think Darren Simmons could be a really big unsung key to this season. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I agree 100%. I think not only with that, but there's definitely an issue with the punt game, right? I mean, there's definitely, and it has been for the last couple of years. I think Darren Simmons, eventually we have got to start turning our attention to Darren Simmons and saying, what is going on back there with the issues with the punt game? I agree with you. I think all special teams coordinators around the league, this is a huge defining year for all of those guys, including Darren Simmons, because of the changes to the kickoff and kickoff return rules. But I think not just there, but what about this punt game? Darren Simmons has got to fix it and fix it quickly. I mean, you could very well say the punt game cost us huge in 2022. Huge in 2022. So, I think there's a big emphasis on special teams this year. The NFL is trying to make it that way. This is a big opportunity for Darren Simmons. What do you think, Mon?
No, I agree. And it's a big unknown when it comes to special teams this year. It's huge. I mean, you heard what the Kansas City Chiefs are thinking about doing, having a safety be their kicker.
Yeah.
So they can give them another person to go down there and potentially help cover on kick returns. I could see that being the wave of the future. So you might not even see Money Mac kicking the ball on kickoffs. You could see somebody else because they might need a bigger body out there. They don't want Money Mac to get hurt. They're going to sign him to a nice contract here in August. So yeah, and the punter thing, like I said, I wasn't really going to talk about rookies, but Eric, you mentioned this before we started. Yeah, that's going to be huge. You're absolutely right. I mean, is McNamara, he has a big leg. He had a great kicker at Texas Tech. He could potentially beat out our draft pick from last year, but from what I saw and read on Robbins, he's taking it serious, and he could have a big jump in year 2. So that's going to be something to monitor. Absolutely, that's going to be huge.
And the punt, I think, you don't want the punter to be that impactful. Looking at the stats, Brad was only a couple yards under Kevin Humer's rookie season, but we do need an improvement out of that game. There's one thing that can help out that a lot. We look at his average, but that doesn't factor in. That's just looking straight at numbers. How many times did we elect to punt inside our own 50? We're at the 49 and it's 4th and 3 and we punt. I want to see more aggression, and his average is going to be down if he's only able to punt at 45 yards max or goes in the end zone. We need a little bit more aggression so that he's only ever punting if he's on the other side of the 50, so he can kick it as hard as possible. What's the one thing you shouldn't ask? I mean, I don't ever want to have a punter try and fit something in. I want him to go out there and kick the crap out of the ball, kick it as far as you possibly can, instead of trying to be at your 45 and kick a 39-yard punt. I think a strategy can help that out as well.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. I mean, the Bengals went out and got a punter, in the offseason. So, obviously we are, all three of us are fans of Brad, but the Bengals obviously went out and got a punter for a reason, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. I want to go back, Mon, and throw a name out that you mentioned, because this is a guy who has been buried on this roster, and that is Chris Evans, right? A guy, Mon, that we had talked about when this show started 2 years ago, this guy being a breakout player for the Bengals and all this other stuff about Chris Evans, and we just haven't seen it. Actually, what we have seen is, Mon, from 2021, the guy played 14 games, had 17 carries, but he was on the field. Went from 14 games played to 12 games played, and this year 8 games played. Chris Evans, I mean, is this the year that we see him either make this roster and actually do something that's going to help this Bengals team? Or is this guy going to get buried on the roster again and not help this football team out at all? Or is he going to get cut? What do you think about Chris Evans? Because this running back room, again, is going to be very interesting. Obviously with Zach Moss coming in, again, another guy, who's been a backup and now is going to get his shot. You got Chase Brown, you got Travion Williams, you got this running back room by committee. Does Chris Evans fit in this room? I mean, what are we going to see from Chris Evans, Mom?
I think he makes the team. The Bengals are going to have a running back room by committee. Chase Brown, phenomenal talent, speed. Zach Moss has had an injury history. He did play a lot last year, but previous years he didn't. They need to do a three-headed monster there. I see Travion Williams making the team. I think Chris Evans makes it. We just talked about special teams earlier. You're going to see significant increase in special teams and kickoff returns. I mean, teams are going to have 2 returners back there. It could be Jackson and Evans back there. I mean, they need playmakers, and Evans is. I don't know why he can't get on the field. I don't know what doghouse he's in. I don't know if it's a issue with assignments, maybe pass blocking. I don't know what it is, but you can make an argument he's probably the most talented running back on the roster. He's that good. His hands are unbelievable. He is. I mean, when he does play, he's pretty phenomenal. But I think he makes the team. I know Paul Dana or some other prominent Bengal pundits have mentioned other running backs that are free agents that the Bengals could consider. But I think they'll have 4 running backs on the roster, and I think they have to due to this new special teams dynamic that's going to hit the NFL.
Well, I mean, again, with this Chris Evans situation, I mean, this is a guy too that the Bengals they're keeping him around for a reason, right? I mean, we thought for sure the Bengals were going to go out and draft a running back. It was on all of our mock drafts. We all had the Bengals going out and drafting a running back, and Chris Evans is still on this roster. I just feel like maybe this is it. I don't know. Maybe this is a sign of what we'll see from Chris Evans if we see anything. But I do know in 2021 the kid looked good, and we all came into 2022 thinking this guy is going to have a crazy breakout year and be that guy behind Joe Mixon. And it just never happened. I mean, if anything, we have seen a huge decline. You talk about healthy scratch. Man, Chris Evans last year was a healthy scratch in half the games, which is crazy. I just going to be interesting to see what happens with Chris Evans. All right, Mon, you got another name out there you want to throw out there to us?
I don't know if he's going to make the team, but I tell you, I know they drafted the kid from Texas A&M. He's a big body guy, but he is a rookie, McKinley. But the Dominique Davis, he was the XFL player. He's been on the practice squad for 2 years. I think he's actually started 2 games. He's been active for about 6 over his last 2 years. He's about a 330-pound defensive lineman. They don't have really the big body defensive tackles. They do like him. They've kept him around. He's still on the roster. I could see him potentially developing or maybe sticking. They need that bigger body guy, but I'm just going to twist back to somebody I talked about, Joseph Osai. But let me give you 2 other names, and they're connected, and I'll tell you why. Zach Carter and Cam Sample. Cam Sample has played a lot. 2 third-round picks and a 4th-round pick over the last 3 drafts. Those guys are. You have got to hit on those guys.
Absolutely.
Cam Sample is a 4th rounder. Zach Carter is a 3rd rounder. Joseph Osai is a 3rd rounder. You can't have busts at those spots. I need those guys to develop and give us quality snaps. Cam Sample has been a good player. Has he been super flashy? No, he hasn't had the opportunities because Hubbard has been fairly healthy. But can Cam Sample play himself into a second contract? It's his final year of his rookie deal. He's been productive. Zach Carter, man, has he been set up to succeed? He played defensive end at Florida. They made him a defensive tackle. They made him put on weight. I don't know. We'll see. They definitely saw something in him. We haven't seen it as Bengal fans. Hopefully, he turns it on in year 3. But we need to hit on 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks.
Well, and I think
that hurts the roster and it doesn't happen.
Don't you feel kind of like that? What you're describing is you're describing the offensive line as well. I mean, again, we just reeled off some names of guys that have been buried on this roster that have not taken the steps forward. Yes, Cam Sample has come in and he's played some good downs. He's not a flashy guy, but Cam Sample, Zach Carter, and Joseph Osai, all those guys are guys that, again, if any of us felt like they had to come in and start, it would be a little scary for us. Again, these are guys that have got to come in and play well for this Bengals team. You and I talk about all the time, when this Bengals defensive line has been successful, it's been successful because they've had guys that can come off the bench. They've had good depth pieces that can come in and get good quality snaps, and they just don't have that, right? I mean, I just feel like they do not have that on either side of the ball, offensive line or defensive line, Lon.
No, I mean, they've had some flashes. We just need a little bit more consistent production from those big uglies, those trench guys. We need that. It's essential for your roster development. I'm not worried about the starters, but injuries happen in the NFL. They happen. Yeah. Nobody wants to use injuries as an excuse. Everybody hates that. But you know what? Injuries are real. Injuries affect your team. The teams that have the best depth, the best rosters, they're the ones that end up going to Super Bowls or going deep into the playoffs. I mean, that's Captain Obvious stuff, but we need our depth to take that next step. We really need them to.
Just to add on to that, it's not just when injuries happen, it's to give those starters rests during the game. We heard many times over the last 2 seasons where Lou went to his guys and said, I need you to stay in there, because
he
didn't have people that could take quality snaps. DJ Reader and BJ Hill come off the field, and it was just, you could clearly tell that they weren't out there because we were giving up 20-yard runs up the middle.
Gosh.
You need guys that can come in there and give a quality snap so that your other guys can rest, and that prevents those injuries as well.
Well, and again, I think that's a great point, Eric. And I think this is why we saw the Bengals go out and get Chris Jenkins and go out and get McKinley Jackson, right? I mean, that's the reason why the Bengals did that, why they wasted, well, I don't want to say wasted, but why they used 2 higher picks on invested. That's a good word. Invested. See, I'm already thinking wasted. That's negative. I can't do that.
Get out of there.
But that is why the Bengals invested higher picks on that position, because like you said, Eric, when DJ was out and BJ was out, it was drastic. I mean, it was like, just those guys come out and it was gash. And hopefully we see these younger guys step up and play well for this Bengals team. Before we, because I do want to talk about, we've had a couple questions about maybe the Bengals dipping into free agency still. Before we do that, guys, let's go ahead and talk about the receiver room real quick. I mean, I know Jermaine Burton is a rookie, but he's filling some pretty big shoes in Tyler Boyd. This is a guy that really, when you talk about unsung heroes, I think this is a rookie right now that can make the biggest impact on this team in Jermaine Burton. What are your thoughts on Jermaine Burton, Mon? And even, I mean, Trent Irwin, we love him. We love him on this show. He's not a flashy guy. He's not going to make big plays. He's going to make big catches for you when you need them. But your thoughts on this receiver room, Mon, and the depth with Jermaine Burton now sliding into that third receiver role. What do you think?
They've invested a lot of picks the last 2 years. I think he's going to be wide receiver 3. I think Yoshivas is going to be 4. I like what we have in that wide receiver room. I'm excited about Burton. I love the interview with TJ Houshmandzadeh and him. He's going to be a good NFL player. I just don't want the ugliness that brought him down in college, the morph in the NFL. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But talent-wise, he could have been a late first, second-round pick. I think he's going to be a stud. He's going to be very important to this team, extremely important, because you're right. I know Tyler Boyd doesn't have a lot of fans. He does have a lot of fans, but he had it up and down the last couple of years with the team. But Tyler Boyd was productive for the Bengals, and he has to fill that slot. I expect Yoshivas to have a really good season. He looked like he put on about 15 pounds of muscle. He really, in his limited action last year, looked good. I think we're set at wide receiver. Now, the key is there's going to be some tough cuts. They usually only keep 6. They only keep 6. What's going to happen? Is it going to be Irwin Jones? What's going to happen here? There's a lot of good players there. They could go 7 there because of the special teams.
What about Chucky Sizzle, Eric? You talked about him a little bit off the air with us. What about Chucky Sizzle? I mean, that's a 4th-round pick, guys, on a wide receiver. That's a guy that's got to be playing football. I mean, he again, we talk about the 4th round where you really can make big hits with those picks. Chucky Sizzle, we have not seen very much from him. 9 receptions, guys. 9 receptions from Chucky Sizzle. What do you think, Eric? Is he going to be an impactful player for this Bengals roster?
And that was going to be, I was going to bring that up and ask you guys. I think he's going to make a huge impact on special teams. I think he's our punt returner, and I think he's definitely one of our kick returners. I mean, the kick return is essentially changed into a punt now, the way it's set up, and actually even possibly more explosive than a punt because they don't have a running start. So I definitely think he makes an impact there. My question would be, can he steal some of those receptions from Burton or from Yoshi? Can he come in there, or is he going to be thrown in there in garbage time when we're up by 30 points?
I mean, Trent Irwin.
I think
Burrow loves Irwin. I mean, that's Irwin's on this roster because of Joe Burrow, and I love Trent Irwin. I think again, like he's made some big catches for us, but Joe Burrow loves Trent Irwin. That's why he is on this roster again. You're right, Eric. He's gonna have a tough time breaking game time. Really is.
I think Irwin's wide receiver 5. I think he makes the team. Chuck Sizzle's going to be 6. The deal is, punt returning, I can see it. From what I've read in the Athletics, a lot of these NFL pundits, experts are talking about the new kickoff return. They're calling it basically a run play, and that a lot of teams are going to have guys around 190 to 210, running backs back there because they need that little bit of added bulk. And I don't know if Chuck Sizzle is if his body can hold on to that.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how that morphs. That's going to be a big thing league wide. I can't wait for preseason football to see how these kickoffs are going to. I mean, you're going to see multiple kickoff return touchdowns this year. You really are. There's only a handful last year. It's going to be pretty dynamic, and I just hope Darren Simmons takes charge of that.
And I know that the NFL pundits are saying that, but from what I've listened to of Darren Simmons and some of his interviews, he's really excited, and he's talked about needing those guys back there that can be shifty and make people miss. I mean, it's not a run play in a trip. I mean, they're still 10 yards apart, and if they're lining up big guys, and you got those big linebacker guys going against someone who's shifty like Charlie Jones or Yoshi, they can move laterally just as fast as they can move vertically. It's hard to put run defenders out there against those guys. So I would argue that we're not going to be viewing it that way. We're going to be viewing it as a make a guy miss and go, and it could easily be taken into the house. You saw what Charlie did against the Ravens. You can see a whole lot more of that.
Well, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is you're going to see a lot more wear and tear on these specialties on these players. So teams might go 7, 8 at wide receiver. They may go 4 or 5 at running back because those are the guys that are going to have to return, kicks. And so instead of, just the ball going in the end zone, get the ball to 20 or 25, you're actually going to see guys going out there and getting creamed. So teams are going to go heavy at one of these specialty spots to make up for that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But Charlie Jones being a 4th round pick,
yeah,
I would be stunned if he didn't make the roster. I mean, you just don't give up on 4th round picks in year 2. And he did break his thumb last year, but he did flash at moments.
He did. So real quick before we get out of here, because we have had a lot of questions, guys. Really 2 positions that I've seen up here: corner and running back. Are those 2 rooms full, or are the Bengals going to make a splash? What do you think, Mom?
I don't know if they're going to make a splash, but they're going to add at those spots. I wouldn't be surprised if they get another vet corner. There's some big names out there, and a lot of these really reputable Bengal pundits, the ones that cover the team, they've done it for years, they keep on saying running back. The running back for the Chiefs, was it McKinnon? Was that his name? He's out there.
Yes.
I've heard his name numerous times.
Bengals,
I think the Bengals are going to go after a veteran running back. So I would not be stunned if that happened. I think we talked about it last week. I think they only have 87 players on the roster.
Yes.
They got to go to they go to camp with 90. So we'll see.
No, you're right. I mean, there is still 3 spots there, and the Bengals have money, guys. I mean, they do have money to go out, and when I say make a splash, obviously it's not going to be big name guys, but
what about Howard from Miami, the cornerback, Xavier Howard? He's still available.
He's still out there, right? He's still
and
out
he has
there.
ties to Lou Anarumo.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, you add someone like that, you know what he is. We don't know what Dax is. We think we know what DJ Turner is, but that was half a season. So you're bringing in a no.
You bring back Eli? Would you bring back Eli Apple?
Yes.
Question to both of you.
Yes,
I would too.
Absolutely.
I would.
Absolutely, I would. 100% I would. He knows the defense, right? He knows his defense. He's not a guy you got to bring in and reteach everything. And the corner position right now is it's going to be interesting. I mean, they're moving guys around. I think Eli Apple, not to start, but to bring in a guy like Eli Apple, I'm all for that. 100% all for Eli Apple coming and joining this team.
He was a good player. I get people are turned off by the chirping. He played well for the Cincinnati Bengals, and you cannot deny that. You can't.
Guys,
just separate it.
Listen, real quick before we get out of here, guys. Mon, Eric, and myself, I want to hear you guys first. Mon, give me your number one unsung hero for this Bengals 2024 team.
The number one unsung hero, I said it first. I need Joseph Osai to have a lights out season.
Joseph Osai, I like it. Eric, give me yours.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm defining it. My unsung hero has a Pro Bowl year or near Pro Bowl year, and that's how I define. That's the guy we don't expect to. If this guy has a close to Pro Bowl year, we win the Super Bowl, and I'm going Cordell Volson.
Cordell Volson. Whoa, I like it. I like it. I'm gonna go pitcher. I'm gonna go Dan Pitcher. I said it first for a reason. I think that Dan Pitcher can make the biggest impact on this football team. We heard Zach Taylor say he's going to back off a little bit on the offensive side. We don't know what that's going to look like. But if he does, Dan Pitcher has the opportunity to take this offense to the next level and give Joe Burrow even more opportunity, guys. And listen, when Joe Burrow has time, Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the NFL. So Dan Pitcher, no pressure, but you are my number one unsung hero. All right, guys, that is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. If you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. If you like this podcast, make sure you give us that 5-star review. We very much appreciate that. As always, follow Mon on Twitter at @TheFireMon. Follow me on Twitter at CoachJakeOwens9. Follow Eric on Twitter at eFlash with 2 H's 88. Follow the Cincinnati Podcast Network on Twitter at CincinnatiPod. And as always, follow Bengals Pulse on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9 on Instagram. The same without the @ Bengals_Pulse9. And as always, check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Cincinnati Podcast Network. Guys, once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, guys. We love you guys. We appreciate you. And again, thank you so much for joining us during these summer weeks where there's just not a lot going on. We love coming on here and talking Bengals with all you guys. He is Mon. I am Eric. No, I'm not Eric. It's been a long week. I just got off a cruise.
You wish.
He is Eric. Eric is over there. I am Jake. That's right. I am Jake. That is Eric. This is the Bengals Pulse. Who Dey Bengal fans. We will see you guys next week.